Conventional wisdom informs that the graphics card is meant to go where the graphics card slot is, but time has marched forwards, and so has case design. Over the years, we've seen a rising popularity in vertically mounting the GPU, mounting the GPU behind the motherboard, mounting the GPU upside down, however you need to do to get it into a small form factor case and make it fit. In the ATX space, we haven't really seen any innovation, but that changes today with the 𝐿&Li SUP01 with its upright formula. Full disclosure, 𝐿&Li did not incentivize us, ask us, promote us, pay us to do a review on this case. While we are a tech retailer, our company believes that reviews should be independent, unbiased, and fair. So with reviews and videos like this one and any in the future, if we have any vested interest, we'll make sure to inform you at the start of the video. Coming in at 45 liters, this case is definitely a lot taller than most conventional ATX cases. With 𝐿&Li pioneering a way to make cases shorter and chunkier, it only seems fair that they're making a taller and skinnier one now. The extra height makes it possible to mount your graphics card like this. It makes it cosplay as intake fans instead of having traditional fans at the front. This case stands at 524 millimeters tall, 404 millimeters deep, and 212 millimeters wide. It features a top, front, and back mesh panel and a tempered glass side panel to allow you to see your parts. Now, this case does come in black as well. We've opted for the white here. I think it does a better job at showing off this unique orientation. For this build here, we have a i5 14600K, a MSI Gaming Trio 4080, and a Asus STRIX B760A motherboard. For the RAM, we have 32GB of Corsair Vengence RGB DDR5 1600MHz. We're also running the FSP Hydro PTM Pro 850W power supply. And finally, for the cooler, we have a Deepcool LT520 AIO. There's a 510mm PCIe Gen 4 riser cable that runs from the motherboard all the way to the back of the case and into the graphics card on the other side. There is also 7 half-size PCIe brackets. The riser cable has an RGB strip running the length of it. There's also an RGB strip running the perimeter of the outside of the case. Down here is a mirror included. It hides two 2.5-inch drive slots. There's also room for two 3.5-inch drive trays underneath the graphics card down here in front of the power supply, which goes here. Alternatively, you could run 4 2.5-inch drives down there as well. Now, the mirror is definitely an interesting inclusion. 𝐿&Li's marketing material states that it creates an extended reflective look. Honestly, it just shows off all the connectors here and the cables that run through here, so you have to be really careful how you actually route these cables, otherwise they might end up looking really ugly and you see them twice. Yeah, I'm not sure about the mirror. I can see what they're going for. Probably not my cup of tea. For connectivity, this case has 2 USB 3.0 ports, 1 USB Type-C 3.1 port, and a 3.5mm mic input. Next to the I/O here, there's also 2 buttons to control the mode of the RGB strip that runs down here and up there, and also the color of the mode that is running. The RGB here can also be controlled with the motherboard software through a ARGB header that goes into the motherboard. The power and reset button have been transmogrified into the 𝐿&Li logo at the front of the case. I really do not like this. Making me have to press a chrome embossed 𝐿&Li logo at the front of the case every time I want to start my computer just feels like it's kicked me down and is continuously kicking me forever. Now, this case has cutouts for the motherboard connections on the back side of the board. Otherwise, there are plenty of grommets that you can route cables through, but I do personally think a BTF motherboard will look much better in this case, especially with the cables down here. Being able to plug them into the back of the case would make this area look much cleaner. And over here, I think would also look great with back to front motherboard connections. Looking at the back of the case, there's space for 3 120mm fans. This case comes with 3 PWM fans included. Next to it, there's space for up to a 360mm radiator or a 280 if you prefer that. Right now, we've got a 240 in there. We also have this weird little thing that secures a 120mm fan to the back of the case. This serves as intake for the motherboard chamber. Now, this thing looks a little bit like an afterthought. I get that 𝐿&Li really wants to commit to this design, and realistically, there wouldn't have been anywhere else that you could have put an intake fan, but I wouldn't do this myself. It just looks a little bit funky. So for airflow then, the radiator is supposed to serve as the intake for this back chamber here. with the 3 included fans set up in exhaust. The exhaust fans do take a bit of the hot air away from the backplate of the GPU as well. Now, we have a 3-chamber design going on here. There's not much cooling here. There's a lot of cooling back here. It also cools the motherboard backplate. And then we also had this front chamber here where the GPU sits. Now, for CPU cooler clearance, this case really was designed to be used with just AIOs. There's only about 90mm of clearance for the CPU cooler, meaning anything like the Valkyrie that we have here aren't going to work yet. Anything with a 120mm fan mounted like this won't work with this case. Now, you can probably get away with a low profile cooler, but it's pretty clear that Lee & Lee designed this case to be used with AIOs specifically. Now, looking at the GPU mounting location, Lee & Lee has included plenty of adjustment to fit any size GPU you can throw at it. It fits up to a 4-slot graphics card with up to 400mm of clearance from top to bottom. There's a bracket at the bottom that allows you to choose between a higher and lower position, as well as letting you adjust side to side. The bracket at the top secures the GPU in place. It has these rubber clamps that grip the GPU in place. Otherwise, graphics cards like this one that has a service screw hole at the top also lines up perfectly with the bracket to secure it in place, so it does not move whatsoever. There's a pass-through at the back of the case that allows you to slip your display cables through the case and into the graphics card. Just be wary though that whatever cable you put in through here will have to run about 400mm in order to plug into the graphics card, taking away a lot of the cable length. Now, GPU choice is a little bit conflicting here. It's been a trend for a while now to put RGB fans at the front of the case, which arguably does look very good, showing through the mesh or glass panel. But because the GPU takes the fan's place, if you don't have RGB on your graphics card, it's not going to show anything from the front of the case. Even with RGB, it's kind of hard to see it. Granted, that's not really how Lee & Lee wanted this case to be displayed. They definitely put a lot more focus on seeing through to the motherboard mounting area to see this unique orientation, rather than being very concerned about anything showing through at the front. Aesthetically, this case is very polarizing. While I really like this unique layout, it does make the motherboard look a little bit naked. On the flip side of this argument, if you have a really pretty motherboard, it does show it off very nicely here. Parts that would usually be blocked by bigger GPUs, especially like this one, you can see it without any problems in this case. I do think though that with the new standard of putting motherboard connections on the back of the board, case manufacturers are going to be able to push the envelope further and further with how they design their cases, and we're going to see a lot more unconventional layouts in the future, which I personally am very excited for, to a point in the future where if you put your graphics card into the traditional place, you're going to get called a boomer. I really like where Lee & Lee has gone with this case. I am quite sad though that you can't see the front of the graphics card. I remember looking longingly at the O11 with the same sort of orientation except with the graphics card here, but the thermals for that were pretty atrocious because there's nothing to take away the hot air that's trapped on the back plate of the graphics card. Lee & Lee definitely took that into account with this design, with the exhaust fans taking away that hot air. Running firmware, we can see that the GPU is at a pretty nice temperature, 66 degrees. I would say that is pretty stable. I don't see a problem running this setup for an extended period of time. Yeah, I think they figured out the thermals before they released this case, definitely. Motherboard staying at a nice 29 degrees. Sure, the direct cooling straight onto the backplate of the motherboard, the cool air swirling around there is definitely helping. It's below 80 on the CPU, we'll hit 90 on Core 4 there. At 100% usage, that's not too bad. That's pretty good. 29 stable on the motherboard as well. Components wise, we're doing pretty well. Overall, I think this is a nice balance. If you have a graphics card that has a pretty backplate and more designs on the side, this will be a pretty amazing case to set your build apart from a lot of what's out there. It's just really refreshing to see something new being done with the ATX format. Isn't it so cool and unique and different?
Sure, but what do we need it to be clean? I'll be more interested in a custom loop in this case. I think so too, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's possible. Why don't we do that?
Time?
I mean, but it'll be cool, right?
Yeah, it'd be very cool. Of course. Sure, I'll just delay all my orders by 2 weeks.
Heard it first, guys. We're gonna make this a water cooling one.
Let's do it. That's 2025. Well, we are ready.
Now, this case is priced at $249 Australian dollars or $149 USD. It's priced similarly to the O11 Vision and the O11 Evo. The Evo is $20 more. For a case that's an early adopter of a new format layout, you gotta account for the amount that Lee & Lee has poured into this case with R&D, and whether we see any new iterations of this case will just depend on how much people like this. I wouldn't buy this, but I think it would be pretty nice if you didn't have a pretty case already. Build quality wise, Lee & Lee has been pretty reputable for a while now, and the SUP is no different. It's very solid, premium materials used, definitely. The RGB strip down the bottom here is very seamless and diffused very nicely, same with the top here. Even with all of the panels and brackets off, it still feels very rigid, a very nice chassis to build in. I think Lee & Lee can be credited to being sort of trendsetters in the case space in the last few years. I really like that they're still putting out new stuff and new designs. While I wouldn't buy this case myself, I do really like it. I think it's a really good new step in diversifying the PC space, and I think its unique layout will do dandily in the oversaturated PC market at the moment. We've created a build like this one available for purchase on our website bbctech.com. It's got a few different components, but the core ethos still stays the same. You can check it out in the link below. Thank you very much for watching. Drop a like if you'd like, and subscribe so I can get a raise. See you next time.